Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one we're going over my favorite GPP stacks for week 8 of the NFL season on Draftkings. Before we continue though, if you could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out and I really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPanos16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheets I build every single week and my Slack chat, links available in the description below for my Patreon. And that's enough plugging. I say we get right into the video. So the first stack I want to talk about for this week is the Shawn Watson with DeAndre Hopkins, obvious, I know. But and then I like Kenny Stills at 4,700. He's a more cheaper option. Then I like running it back with Darren Waller at 5,900. So let's talk about this stack first. Well, first of all, I do like the Texans a lot. There's a lot of upside here, and Vegas would agree. Vegas loves the Texans. They have a 28.5 team total, and I believe the over-unders at 51.5, which is the second highest on the slate. So points are going to be scored. Texans are 6-point favorites. So let's talk about Deshaun Watson. So this is a very beatable secondary for him and his receiving options. They just got absolutely shredded last week by Aaron Rodgers and his clown show group of wide receivers, and MVS, Jordan Wilson, and Jimmy Graham. They're Oakland's 26th DVOA versus the pass, which is obviously that's awful. They're allowing 24.6 points per game to quarterbacks, which is third most in the entire league. And Deshaun Watson, he should have time to sit back and throw and relax. You sit back and relax on his throws because they actually have a really good offensive line versus defensive line pass blocking matchup this week. It's sixth best in the league. And Oakland is also allowing over 300 yards passing per game, which is third most in the NFL. And one of the best things about Deshaun Watson, what makes him an elite fantasy quarterback option, he has amazing rushing upside. He has 5 rushing touchdowns on the season, which is obviously spectacular, and he's obviously a great quarterback through the air as well. So it's like we're just relying on rushing duties because versus Atlanta he had 5 passing touchdowns and only 47 yards on the ground. So Deshaun Watson, I think he can ball out in this matchup just like Aaron Rodgers did last week. Now I'm not saying he's gonna get 50 fantasy points like Aaron Rodgers did last week, but I think we got similar upside here. I think he can get you into the 30s, and he's got upside of 40 as well. So do you like Deshaun Watson? And as for his pass catchers, DeAndre Hopkins is obviously the number one option here and the most obvious option. And he's coming out of a little mini slump here. He broke out last week. I know it wasn't really like a big slump, but for someone like DeAndre Hopkins, I guess it was a slump. So he had 34 points, 9 points, 12, 8, 15, 6 aren't too bad. But, DeAndre Hopkins, we want 20-plus points. Well, last week versus Indianapolis, he ended up getting 28.6, which is, that's fantastic. And I'll take that every single time. And with Will Fuller gone, Watson's going to have to lean on Hopkins even more, and he already owns a massive 29% target share on the season, which is second only behind Michael Thomas. I know he's expensive, but I do think he's worth it, and there's enough value on the slate to get it done. I do view him as a safe play with huge upside. And then as for Kenny Stills at 4,700, he's a lot cheaper, and it's going to be hard for him to not hit value in my opinion. And it's really simple for him. Will Fuller's going to be out, so he's going to step up, and he played 94% of the snaps last week, so he's going to be on the field pretty much the entire game. He's even coming off a 100-yard outing last week where he had 5 targets for 4 catches and 105 yards. And he can catch the deep ball too. He's not just limited to short routes. He's a deep ball guy. And if you don't want to play DeAndre Hopkins and spin up a running back and still get the stack going, I think that's fine. You can use Kenny Stills. He's very cheap at 4,700, and he's going to allow you to spin up at the running back position. DeAndre Hopkins, you're probably going to be sacrificing a running back like Leonard Fournette or someone like Saquon Barkley. So if you feel more comfortable with an expensive running back, yeah, you can do that. But I still think Deshaun Watson and Kenny Stills is a fantastic combo. And I also think Kiki Cutie's in play too. He's only 4,100, I believe, and he has upside as well. We saw Kiki Cutie thrive in this offense before. He usually always gets hurt, so it's not a huge sample size, but he's fine. And last week he played over 60% of the snaps. He's more of the slot receiver, and he had 11.9 points. They get into the end zone on a short touchdown, but don't mind him either at 4,100. I expect him to be lower owned than Kenny Stills, so if you want to get a little bit different there, I think that's fine. And for GPP stacks, we like running it back with someone else on the other team because that's just good correlation. Because if we think the Texans are going to go off, the Raiders are probably going to have to end up throwing the ball. And so I want someone on that side of the ball. And Darren Waller is going to be our guy at 5,900. The guy is absolutely balling out. And he's just having a monster season. He's got tons of talent and opportunity. And he has a lot of opportunity. He owns a 26% target share, which leads all tight ends on the slate, just the season in general. And he's just been great. And he finally got the touchdowns. He had 2 touchdowns last week. He had 34 fantasy points. And I know the Texans have been very good versus tight ends, but I really don't care here. The Raiders just involve the tight ends so much, and he's just so heavily targeted. He's going to be the main part of this offense, and he's just been great this season. So definitely like getting myself some Darren Waller in. He's got upside of double-digit catches and double-digit targets as well. So Darren Waller, I think he's a fantastic option to run it back, and yeah, I just like Darren Waller a lot. So that's my first stack I want to talk about. Then the second stack I want to talk about is a Lions Giants stack. So we're going to put Matthew Stafford in a quarterback at 6,100. So he's a little bit more affordable. Because I usually don't love breaking the bank at quarterback, but there's a couple exceptions we can make this week. And then I like Kenny Golladay at 6,400. And then we can run it back with someone like either Evan Engram, or we could run it back with Saquon Barkley. So let's just talk about this key piece first. So I think Stafford to Golladay is going to be, I think it's going to be one of the top stacks on the slate. He grades out very well for me, and Kerryon Johnson is gone, so I imagine they're going to have to lean on the passing game even more. And this is a very beatable matchup for them. The Giants are giving up 21 points per game to quarterbacks, which is 10th most in the league so far. They're 28th DVOA versus the pass. And as for the pass catchers, it was Jones that had the big game last week, but I do think, and first I should say, Stafford, he has upside this season. He's shown big game upside this season. Now, he's had a couple clunkers, but he's been kind of hit or miss. He had 31 points week 1 versus Arizona, 17 week 2, then 12, then 24, then 11, then 32. So, it's going to be hit or miss, but I think this is going to be one of his big hit games, especially at home versus the Giants, who have struggled through the air this season. So I do like Matthew Stafford. I do like the price. And as for his main weapon, we have Kenny Golladay at 6,400, and he's one of my favorite plays of the week, actually. I probably should have put him in my core plays video, but he's just grading out really high for me on my sheet, and the Cardinals are absolutely sucked last week in the passing game, so it kind of makes their numbers a little bit better versus wide receivers this season. I'm talking about the Giants' defense, but that's just because Chase Edmonds ran all over them, so they really didn't have to pass. They had an early lead quick. But still, they're giving up over 40 points per game to wide receivers, and Golladay has the number 1 wide receiver versus cornerback matchup on PFF this week. And also, I should mention Detroit has one of the highest implied totals on the slate at 28.5. I know it's crazy to think. The Lions have a total of 28.5. So points are going to be scored here on this offense, and I do think Golladay is a big part of that. Yeah, you can play Marvin Jones. I don't remember exactly what his price is off the top of my head, but yeah, he's 5,800, so if you want to play him too, obviously he had that fantastic game last week where he had 43 fantasy points, and, he's kind of another hit or miss guy, but he's been fine this season. It's not like he's been awful. 10 points, 9 points, 25 points, 10 points, 3 versus Green Bay sucked, but then 43, so honestly, I think he's fine too. He's a little bit cheaper, but I think Galladay's the more safer option, but he did see 13 targets last week, which is insane, but still, I like Golladay more, but if you want to throw in Marvin Jones, I think that's fine as well. Then as for who we're going to bring it back with, I think you could use Saquon. I think you could use Evan Engram because obviously Saquon's involved in the passing game. It's not like he's just a run-only running back. So, but the problem with Saquon Barkley is he absolutely breaks the bank. So I actually like Evan Engram here. And who, besides last week, I know he sucked last week versus Arizona because, go figure, right? But besides that, he's been fine I shouldn't say fine. He's been great. 31 points, 10 points, 26, 9, 10, then 1.6 last week versus Arizona. You know what? It happens. We're going to give him a pass. He's one of the best tight ends in the league. He's one of the most athletic tight ends in the league. He can make a big play happen. He's not just some stiff board that catches the ball and falls down like Jason Witten. If he gets the ball in open space, good things can happen here. And Detroit's been very good versus the pass this season to wide receivers, but they're more middle of the road versus tight ends, and I really don't see any of the Giants receivers having a good game. Maybe Golden Tate has a nice revenge game, but I do prefer tacking him to the middle of the field with Evan Engram. So do like Evan Engram to bring it back. Saquon Barkley is obviously fine, but he's also very expensive. Then the last stack I want to talk about is the Seahawks-Falcons stack. So I'm hoping Matt Ryan plays because that would just be better for this game overall. I'm not sure what he's going to do yet, but let's just plug in Russell Wilson for right now. And then we're going to plug in some of his pass catchers. I like Tyler Lockett, and I also like DK Metcalf, who is 5K. Then I like running it back with Austin Hooper at 5,500. So let's talk about Russell Wilson first in this offense. So he draws the best matchup you can ask for a quarterback. He faces Atlanta, who's giving up 26.2 points per game to quarterbacks this season, which is most in the entire league. And Atlanta is also 31st DVOA versus the pass, which is second worst. And they're allowing around 275 yards and 2.4 touchdowns per game to quarterbacks. And like I've said before, Atlanta's awful generating pressure on quarterbacks, as they are 32nd in adjusted sack rate, averaging 0.71 sacks per game. And obviously that's great because when quarterbacks have time in the pocket, they got a nice clean pocket, good things happen. And the total has dropped in this game like just a smidge. I've seen some sites take it off a point, some sites haven't taken off anything, but just a smidge. I believe that's factoring in Matt Ryan possibly missing the game. And I honestly don't know what's going on with him. He hasn't practiced yet, but it's Matt Ryan, so he really doesn't have to practice. He could be fine on game day. but it's discouraging not to see him practice. But he does have a long-standing starting streak, so maybe he wants to keep that alive. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to play. I would prefer him to play because I think this would make the game closer and more of a shootout. And if he doesn't play, I could see the Seahawks getting into an early lead and Chris Carson dominates. So actually, Chris Carson's my favorite cash game play running back this week. But for GPPs, if this game stays close, I think Russell Wilson can ball out here. And Russell Wilson versus Atlanta, it's a smash spot. He's the most expensive quarterback on the slate. I get that, but I think he's in a fantastic spot, and he should be able to have a great game. And then I like pairing him with this, obviously his passing options. So let's talk about Tyler Lockett first at 7,000. He's probably the more safer play. I mean, he's got an upside too. It's not like he's just a safe play. I mean, he's got ceiling too. I mean, 11 points, 17 points, 35 versus New Orleans. Then 9, 14, 12, 16. So he's very safe. He's more than likely going to get you double-digit targets. Not double-digit targets, double-digit points, which he's done every single game this season besides one versus Arizona because, of course, right? So I do like Tyler Lockett a lot, but if you don't want to spend all the way up for Tyler Lockett, I think DK Metcalf's a very, very good option this week. I don't know how sneaky he's going to be because, people tend to be a lot smarter this week. So none of the sneaky plays are sneaky anymore. They tend to be more popular like Will Fuller was a few weeks ago. But I like this matchup a lot for DK Metcalf. The Falcons are allowing 43 points per game to wide receivers, which is 6th most in the NFL, and nearly 200 receiving yards per game. So there's enough yards to go around for both him and Lockett. And like I said, Lockett's the more safe play. He's got a high ceiling too, but I do like Metcalf a lot in GPP. I think he's got a really high ceiling here. Atlanta sucks versus deep balls. You guys saw what Will Fuller did to them a few weeks ago. And Metcalf's our deep ball guy here, especially on this offense. And, in the league, too, he's one of the better deep ball guys. He has one of the higher ADOTs in the league at 14.4 yards. And he has yards per reception at 19.5, which is one of the highest in the league. Now, he's not super heavily targeted or a big volume guy each week, but I think he can make do with his limited targets in this matchup. And I like running this stack back with Austin Hooper. He's 5,500, but the guy's been, straight money this season pretty much. So I like him actually whether Ryan plays or not, considering he's more of the check down guy for this offense. Matt Schaub, I mean, he can get him the ball, and he actually did catch his touchdown from Matt Schaub. It was really late in the game, but still, Matt Schaub should be able to get him the ball. It's not like he's some new rookie quarterback. He's been in the league for a long time. Austin Hooper, I think he's going to be fine either way. Obviously, I'd prefer if Matt Ryan plays because it just boosts his ceiling. But really, if he doesn't play, I'm really just downgrading Ridley and Julio more so than I would Austin Hooper. I think Austin Hooper should probably be just fine. And this is a great matchup versus Seattle. They really struggle with tight ends. They're giving up 15.5 points per game to tight ends this season, which is third most in the entire league. And it could be worse, but Mark Andrews had decided to drop a touchdown last week, which is a very easy touchdown. So it could be worse, but still, they suck versus tight ends, and he's been straight balling this year. So I think he's a safe floor guy with high upside, especially if Matt Ryan's starting. Even if he doesn't, I think he'll be fine. But if you look at his game log this season, 14, 28, 13, 25, 24, 7, 16. His worst game was 7 versus Philly. So I think he's going to be fine, especially versus Seattle. Falcons are probably going to throw the ball a lot. They've been throwing the ball a ton this season. So Austin Hooper, I think you can fire him up. So that's going to be... man. So that's going to be it for these stacks. Now, if you want a really cheap dumpster stack, it's not my favorite, but you could go with Ryan Tannehill, and then I don't mind Corey Davis or maybe even A.J. Brown. I don't remember what Corey Davis's price is off the top of my head. Oh, it's 4,400. I actually don't mind this. It's a good matchup versus Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is locked down versus the run, but they struggle versus the pass. They did last season. They're doing it again. So I think Ryan Tannehill, Corey Davis is, that's all right. A.J. Brown's up there too. Delaney Walker, depending if he plays or not. Jonnu Smith, maybe. Then you could always run it back with someone like Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, who I don't think anyone's really talking about this week. So could be lower owned. I know Ryan Tannehill probably won't be that low owned because I know people are talking about him in their videos. So people are going to end up playing him, and he's just a really good value play. He grades out one of the better value plays on my sheet as well. So don't mind Ryan Tannehill. It's just I don't know about full stacking it, but if you got the balls to do it, I guess you can do it. And if you want to go back to the Cooper Kupp, Jared Goff, I don't mind that. They're playing Cincy. And people are probably going to be off Cooper Kupp this week because of this two, somewhat down games. He had a really down game versus the 49ers. And then he had 11 last week versus Atlanta. We were expecting big things out of them. He's still one of the most targeted receivers in football this season. I believe he's like third or fourth on target shares and whatnot. But people are going to be off him, and it's a good matchup versus Cincy. I mean, I know they're terrible versus the run, but they're not that great versus the pass either. So Cooper Kupp, if you want to go back to that at lower ownership, because he's been chalked the past few weeks now. So people are probably jump off the well. I don't mind Cooper Kupp at this price. I made it sound like he's cheap, but I'm trying to say I know he's expensive, but I still don't mind him because I think he's one of the better players in football, or receivers, I should say. So I don't mind that. Then really, I don't know who you'd run it back with. Maybe Auden Tate. I don't know why I said that. Probably don't want to do Auden Tate. Maybe Tyler Boyd. I don't know. I don't love it. I'd rather just stay on the Jared Goff, Cooper Kupp train. And I think that's really all I'm going to talk about. Depending on if Drew Brees plays or not, you could do Drew Brees with Michael Thomas. I think Michael Thomas should smash versus Arizona. I'm not really too scared of that matchup. And then really, other than that, obviously don't want to play Odell. I mean, you could use Robert Woods if you don't want to use Cooper Kupp. But yeah, I think that's all I really want to talk about. I like the Josh Allen, John Brown stack. I really just more like John Brown more, kind of like of a one-off. But if I'm going to pair him with Josh Allen, hope he beats up that bad Philly secondary. Yeah, I don't mind that either. But I think that's just about it that I want to talk about. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Remember, leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at ChrisPanel16 and check out my core plays video. That's my favorite video I put out each week. It's probably the video I put the most time in, so check it out if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next video.